If you've been following this Creative Mending series, welcome back. Today, I've got two quick mends, a popped t-shirt seam and a pair of holey shorts. These aren't flashy projects, but mending doesn't always give you a big wow moment. Sometimes it just restores what we already love, and that's its own kind of win. Hello, sewing friends, and welcome to Sew Suzette, the place to sew better and sew happier. I also have a t-shirt that has a side seam that's got a little bit of a hole in it. That's a pretty simple fix. We'll just throw that onto the serger and serge over it so that it makes it more secure and wearable again. And it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. There's just this little hole here in the side seam. The stitching has come apart and we are just going to bring it back together at the sewing machine or the serger. Now there is a little bit of a hole here where the stitching pulled through, so I'm probably going to throw some interfacing under that just to make sure that everything stays nice and stable and secure in the future. So let's show you how that's done. So here at the ironing board, and here's that hole again. So when we turn the shirt inside out, you can see what the problem probably was. It looks like there was a tag sewn in here and somebody tried to rip that out, and it ripped the seam and it ripped the spot where the tag was sewn in. So I'm going to remove that, get that tag out of there, and then we have all of these little extra threads from where it ripped. I'm just going to remove those as much as I can and snip anything that's long and in the way. We'll check it from the outside and make sure nothing is interfering. There's another long one right there, so just get that out of the way. Okay, that's going to look okay from the outside once we get it sewn. All right. What I need now is to apply this interfacing, and I'm going to try to just flatten that seam out a little bit with the iron and a little steam. And I want to take this little scrapped piece of interfacing, and I'm going to interface a little bit more above and below it, just to make sure that we get a really good strong bond and we get a nice strong seam. With interfacing, you just press, you don't iron. You want to lift. If it was a bigger piece, you would hold it down for the recommended amount of time that comes with your interfacing, and then you're going to lift, and then you'd replace in another spot. Okay, I only have a small spot, so I'm going to make sure that we're just holding that there. I put a little bit of pressure on that just to make sure that we get a really good bond between the interfacing, the glue, and the fabric. And then we'll lift from there and we'll let it cool. That looks like it's a good bond. And I'm going to do the same on the other side because there was a small little hole over here as well. Check our bond there. Make sure everything is sealed around the edges and it's not going to peel up. And that seems like it's good. And on the back side, well, that piece still doesn't want to stay. Well, it just might be that wasn't any glue in there. I don't think that's going to matter too much because the hole is well before this. I'm going to sew, probably starting pretty low on this shirt, as low as I can get, and then starting in the seam allowance, and I'm going to sew and then come out of the seam allowance just by probably a thread or three widths of the thread, and just kind of come out a little bit. So I'm kind of going over where that hole was, and I'm going to sew through there, and then come gradually back and then end up back in the seam allowance. So hopefully you won't even notice that we had to go a little bit further past the normal seam allowance to get that closed up properly. Okay, let's head to the serger. And just lift that presser foot. We're going to come in right over the seam allowance that's already here. And then I'm going to try to match the seam that's already here with this seam guide right here. You can see that it's right there. There's my left needle and my right needle seam line, seam guide. And I'm going to try to make sure that those are matched up, and then when I get to the point of sewing where the hole is, I'm going to make sure that my thread that's already here is just going right in the middle of those, so I can be just ever so slightly to the left, and then it can cover up that hole. So there's the new seam. So as I said, I started going slightly off the seam, and then I came in at an angle and I started sewing right over the seam. And then I pulled in just a little bit more here where the hole was. And then we angled back toward the original seam here, and then just sewed off at the end right there. So let's see what it looks like from the outside. There we are. That is the outside. This is where the seam was pulled apart right there, and that looks great. So we're just going to give it a quick little press, and this will be done and ready to put in the finished pile. Last on my list today is a pair of my husband's shorts. These are just some inexpensive shorts that he has had for quite a while, but he does like wearing them. They're very comfortable. And he's got a little bit of a hole right here near the fly, and then there's another one in the back right next to the reinforced area of the back pocket seam. He tends to put his phone back here quite often, so it's heavy and it's been wearing down. So we will see what we can do to try to find a patch for that and make it more stable and sturdy. All right, this is the last mending project for this video, and it's just a pair of shorts that my husband wears. They're pretty worn out. This isn't going to be a pretty mend. This is just going to be quick, down and dirty, just to get them mended. And again, we're going to use the interfacing that I've been using throughout the different projects in this video and give it a little bit more stability. This is going to be challenging in the sense that this rip is right up against the reinforcement where the pocket has that little diamond reinforcement stitch there. So we'll see what we can do to try to get it correct as far as getting that interfacing on there. All right, let's head over to the ironing board for this one as well. Okay, we are back here and back with that same strip that I've been working from for all of the different projects so far. And let's get that. Let's do the easy one first. That's the one here next to the fly. The first thing I want to do is just give it a press so that everything is laying flat before I even put the interfacing there. Okay, so I have my dressmaker's ham in here, and I have the shorts turned completely inside out. This just gives me really good access to that area without having the rest of the shorts underneath it, potentially wrinkling or maybe a seam in the way. So just really need a fairly small piece. I'm going to cut from this end. It's a little wider. And again, you want to make sure that the area that has the rough side is the side that's down, because that's the side with the glue. With this interfacing, sometimes it's a little hard to tell. There we go. And then just press. Don't move your iron because you will shift that interfacing and you might get a wrinkle in it. And then once it's tacked on, just let it cool. Okay, so now we're just going to test the edge, make sure everything's there. That's good. And then I could just leave it like that, but I wanted to make sure that this hole doesn't give it a extra weak spot in the pants. And we're just going to give it a quick darning at the regular machine. So let's work on that back pocket. And then again, the same thing with the dress hem. This one is going to be, like I said, it's going to be a little tricky. So I'm going to think I'm going to do this one in 2 stages. I'm going to put a piece on. I'm going to lift that pocket out of the way as much as I can. And I need to really try to keep these edges together. I think I'm going to take these threads out. And then I'm trying to kind of kiss those edges together. And then I'm placing my interfacing just underneath the pocket. And then we're going to press that one. And that seems to be on there. So I still have the gap that's up here. And that one, I don't think I'm going to be able to, I can't get any interfacing on it. So what I'm going to do is put a piece over it. So I'm going to make this one much longer. Try to keep those edges kissed together. And I'm going to just take this here and I'm going to put it across the pocket like this. I'm pressing it to the pocket first, just to make sure we've got good adherence here. And then I'm going to set this down in the angle of that, where that pocket meets the fabric of the short. And then tack that here. And then slide this in so it really gets into that space there. Now this interfacing has a stretch to it. There is a crosswise stretch. So what I want to do is I want to take another piece and I want to lay it this way, as the interfacing is going this way, and that's the way that hole opens. And so if you can see, there's some stretch here on the interfacing, but there's no stretch this way. I want to place a piece down over both of these pieces that are already here and just reinforce that. You know, with mending, there's really no right and wrong way. You can try to mend it so that it's invisible. You can do visible mending, where you can see the mend from the outside, like putting a patch over something and sewing the patch on, or doing embroidery over a hole. Then you can do invisible mending, where you try to do it in such a way that you can't see the repair, and maybe that might be more helpful for, well, it's still gaping, but it's not gaping as much. So we'll try to keep it together when we go to the machine and figure out how we're going to sew it. This one just may need a patch on the outside. I don't know. I don't know how he'll feel about that. Okay, let's go to the machine and figure out what we can do with it. All right, so before I get to the sewing machine, I've been kind of looking these over and trying to figure out how best to get this to be a more secure area, because it is still gaping, and even if I start sewing it, it's very thick. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to make a patch, a small one, so that it doesn't show very much. And I went to my scrap basket and picked out a couple of pieces. This is a 1.5 strip that I have, but that one is much darker than the gray shorts. And this one has a pattern on it, and I don't think he's much into having the pattern show. But I think if I flip it over and put the plain side out, and we just cover it over, and we do some darning stitches on that, it probably won't be so bad. You won't really see it too much. So I think that's going to be our choice. I'm going to just snip a square of it, or a rectangle in this case, and that should be enough to keep it covered. I have some Wonder Under here, and I just need to, if you don't know what Wonder Under is, basically it is a fusible product that's paper backed, and you can fuse it to one side of your fabric and then peel off the paper, and then you'll be able to fuse it onto another piece of fabric. A lot of people use it for applique in quilting or crafting, and it's pretty cool. All right, so I have my patch on one side, the rough side. So this is an older roll, so that's already coming apart. But the fusible webbing is in the center, and then the paper is on this side. And I'm going to put that on my Teflon. Get my iron heated up here, and I need to fold the Teflon over that, because I don't want to get anything sticky on my iron. It's the same thing as with interfacing. When you're using this product, you don't want to shift your iron or slide it around. You're just putting the heat on it. So it's like with vinyl pressing when you're doing like Cricut or anything like that. It's the combination of the length of time, the temperature that you're using, and the pressure that you're using. So it has nothing to do with sliding around. You just really want to give it a good press and hold it there for a while. See, this is why I didn't want to press that just on my iron, because now I have the fusible webbing is sticking out, so it would have stuck either to my ironing board or to my iron, and that's a pretty sloppy mess to have to clean up. So now I'm going to trim it down a little bit more, because it is adhered to that fusible webbing and it's a little bit more stiff, and now I can cut it a little bit more precisely. And then we just need to peel off the paper. There it goes. And then you can hear it. It peels off, and then you can feel the film on the other side of this patch. We're going to use the tailor's ham again. So that's it. We've just made a quick patch. All right, let's get that Teflon out of the way. Let that cool off a little bit. There we go. And then again, the same thing like we did with the interfacing. We're just going to see if we can peel up any of the edges, and we're not. So that should hold pretty well between the back side and the front side. That shouldn't rip again in the future. And then we have the front one that we just have to do a little bit of darning on there. So now let's take it to the sewing machine for real. If your machine has a darning stitch, you can use that. I would pull out your sewing machine manual. I always keep my manuals close by to my machines so that I can look up different things, especially on my more complex machines. This machine does not have a specific darning stitch. So I'm going to do a very small zigzag around this patch just to keep it stuck onto the fabric without much issue. And hopefully we can get through all of these layers. It is pretty thick. Okay, well, it went down with no problem. Hopefully, as long as we sew pretty slow, we should be okay. Looks like it might have been skipping some stitches. We'll have to see. It's doing all right now. I can see them in there. I'm just going to come down to the corner, make a turn, and sew the rest of the way around the patch. Yeah, see, you can see there it skipped some stitches, probably because it's just really super thick on that side. I'm not that concerned about it. If this was a fashion project, I would be, and I would go back and fix that, but it's a patch, so I'm not that concerned over it. All right, and on this one, I'm not going to back tack because I'm just going to pull the stitch to the back side and I'll tie it. There's my bobbin thread, and when you pull on it, you get the loop of the top thread and you just pull that through, and then you can tie them. And this is the top thread of the beginning stitch, which I didn't have bobbin thread on the back because it was newly threaded. And so I'm just going to do thread through a needle, and we'll push it through the back, and then we can tie all three of those threads together. There we go. Just get a decently secure knot, and we'll give it a clip. So switch back to straight stitch. And because my hip went vertically, I'm going to sew horizontally. Now you could just do the 3-step zigzag as well, which actually, now I'm thinking about it, that might be a better idea. So let's change to that one. And we're just going to sew down one side of the patch and then down the other. This one doesn't back stitch, it just kind of tacks the thread into place. So we're just going to do that. And then I'm going to come down in the middle right here. That's right where that hump is, and that's right where that split is. So hopefully this will work. All right, so that did pretty good. That didn't skip any stitches. And then we're just going to turn it and come back down on this side again, just to kind of really secure this patch in place. All right, so this patch is on, and it should be pretty secure now between the Wonder Under and the stitching. That shouldn't be going anywhere. Now, if the rest of the pants can hold up as long as the patches can, that's a different story. Let's get to the front side here. So we have options. Again, here we can do a 3-step zigzag, or we can just do some back and forth straight stitching. I think I'm going to do that here on this one. And so just really kind of more traditional darning. And I'm going to drop my stitch length down from the normal 2.5 down to a 2. And I'm going to stitch just to beyond where that hole is. And then I'm just going to back stitch, and I'm going to pull the fabric ever so slightly to the left. And then I'm going to come back down in a straight stitch, and I'm going to still pull ever so slightly to the left. Back stitch, and then just slightly pull as it starts moving. I'm going nice and slow so I can see where my hole is and make sure I get enough coverage on that. Okay, and now I'm going to leave my needle down, and I'm going to lift and turn, and I'm going to, from here I'm going to back stitch, and then I'm going to forward stitch, and now I'm going to be pulling to the right because here's the rest of my stitching there. Basically, you're kind of making a zigzaggy type of movement, only you're going with a straight stitch all the way down. All right, let me show you, get this out of here, and then I can bring you up close and you can see what I did and see why I chose to not to do it on that patch, because it just, it's a little bit too much. So there you go. That is the darning. So I have rows going this way, which it's hard to see because the thread matches so well. But then I have more rows going this way. Basically, it's just kind of securing the weave of the fabric and holding that hole in place. It might be a little bit easier to see from the back. And you can see I've got stitches going back and forth this way and then up and down this way. And with that interfacing, it'll hold that hole together and that shouldn't rip any further. And that's really what I'm aiming for, is not so much beauty. He doesn't really care. We just want to keep that hole from being a weak spot and ripping any further. This is the t-shirt that had the hole where somebody ripped the tag out. And again, here's that side that we did the repair in. You can't even tell. And even though it clips in slightly, there's no way of being able to tell that. That just looks exactly like the rest of the t-shirt seam. All right, and this was right here where we did that. And so that looks really great. And I do, again, I can't tell you how much I use interfacing on repair projects like this. It's a fabulous way of stabilizing facings and other things when you're constructing clothing. But when you're repairing, I just find it absolutely invaluable. And then the shorts that we just finished. Here we go. This is the front of the shorts. And we have that hole that was right here near the fly. And from afar, it's hardly visible. And then the back part, that one is definitely a visible mending, but it blends in enough. It's not perfect as far as the blend goes, but it's going to hold that pocket stable, and he's not going to have the whole pocket ripped down and lose his phone or show off what he's got on underneath, because, you know, nobody wants that, right? And that's it. 2 more garments saved from the someday pile and put back into everyday life. They may not be perfect, but they're wearable, useful, and staying out of the landfill. And that's a win in my book. That finishes this first Creative Mending series, at least for now. But if you've missed the jacket repair or the bra and dish rag fixes, you can still watch them anytime. They're both linked below. That basket never stays empty for long, so there will definitely be more fixes in the future. I'd love to know, do you mend because it saves money or because you like keeping things going a little longer? Share your reason down below. Every stitch tells a story. Thanks for hanging out with me in the studio today. So better, so happier. Bye for now.